welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Abassi. I'm a grateful recovering alcoholic and stroke survivor. And today I want to talk about the concept of giving freely. And I want to talk about how putting sobriety first helps everything else in our lives fall into place, and how we can move throughout recovery from feeling confined to feeling free. And I kind of realized at this very second that I said this, that I was just texting with somebody about putting sobriety first and everything falls into place. And I was like, wait a minute, I was just talking about that. That's funny. So only in sobriety, that's where this stuff happens to me. So starting off, one of the lessons that I've learned in recovery is the importance of freely giving away what I have. So what I've heard since I started sobriety was giving it away in order to keep it, meaning freely giving what has been given to me, all of the experience, strength, and hope that was given to me by others, by going to meetings, being people giving me their time and their love and all of that stuff, that I need to give mine away also in order to keep my sobriety. So it means that by sharing our experiences, strength, and hope with others, we reinforce our own sobriety. When we put our sobriety first, everything else tends to fall into place. One thing I heard in the program when I first got in was fitting your life around sobriety rather than fitting sobriety into your life. Fitting, or in other words, fitting your life around meetings, around sobriety meetings, rather than fitting sobriety meetings into your life. So that is how my life has been able to gain this sense of balance, because when I first got out of detox the second time, and I was willing to take all suggestions, that is when I talked to work, I talked to my family, and I truly had to fit my life around my sobriety program to make sure that I didn't miss a meeting. I was able to meet with my sponsor. I was able to go to IOP. All of these things, it was important to prioritize my program, my sobriety. And it would have seemed impossible before I got sober to look at my life in that way. I would have never been able to, before I quit drinking, look at my life and be like, oh, you're going to be going to an hour meeting after work every night on the way home. I would have been like, I don't even have time as it is to take care of my family, go to work, have a 3-hour drive and all that stuff. But when I got sober, it wasn't an option. That's what I had to do in order to stay sober. And very much we do what we need to do in order to survive. And what would have seemed impossible to me was absolutely possible. And I'm at the point now where I go to a meeting, virtually be it, but I still go every day for at least an hour. And now I actually go every morning for 2 hours. I go to 2 different meetings in the morning. So this feeling came up in this morning's meeting about what it was like when I first got sober. And it's that same thing of looking at my life and being like, there's no way that I'll be able to do that. No way I'll be able to fit all of this into my life. Another thing is like, it felt like when I looked at going to meetings and doing all these things, it felt like restrictions. It felt like my life was going to be super confined. And this confinement felt like it was going to be physical because I couldn't drink anymore. And then it felt like it was going to be emotional, I should say, emotional and mental, like that I was going to have to control everything. And I felt like because I had to start looking at my fears and my obsessions and my depression, that it was just going to take hold of me and restrict me from being able to be free. Because drinking at that time, I thought was what was making me feel free. Because if I drank, I felt free of my fears, obsessions, and depression. But it was quite the opposite. Drinking just fed my fears and my obsession and my depression. It was also very familiar for me to think that I didn't deserve to be free from all of these things. I didn't deserve to be free from pain. I don't know why, I can't explain it, but I was so set on the fact that I deserved to suffer and that this was just the way that my life was always going to be. So I felt like I was trapped. And when I took away the drink, I didn't have a way to get untrapped. That's what this feeling of confinement um, felt like when I first stopped drinking. The urge to escape when you're feeling like the walls closing in early sobriety because you don't have that escape that you're used to can be overwhelming. And a lot of times that urge to escape becomes the reason why you end up drinking again, right? It's escaping through our old habits, and then it starts the cycle again, leading to even more confinement. And then, like, quitting drinking and not working the program and then drinking again, it's like when I went to detox the first time and I stopped drinking for 2 months, and I felt like that confinement, like the walls were starting to close in, like I can't do this. I have to look at my fears, my obsession, my depression was just, it felt like swelling. It was swelling and closing me inside myself. And so I started drinking again a couple months later. And then having the memory of that's what it's like to stop drinking it's difficult to think about facing that again. I think that's why it's difficult to walk back into sobriety when you've tried it once. There are folks who are in and out, in and out, in and out, and they don't really get to see what it's like to practice the program and be sober, because walking through those challenges, despite the fear, the obsession, and the depression, the only way to it is through it. Walking through them, that's where the freedom is. It's like you feel more confined, like the world is, this is what it feels like to me at least, like the world was swelling up around me, so much that I just was suffocating inside my own problems. Um, and then it began to deflate. Those walls began to get thinner. The stuff that was holding me in and trapping me inside of myself began to slowly break away and get thinner. And that's because I was facing them. I was looking at them and talking about them and going to meetings, but it's not immediate. And that is that it seems like that time of feeling confinement between just quitting drinking and getting, a few months in, starting to work the steps, seeing something happen. It's hard. It's hard to not escape before the miracle happens. And that's what they say in the program is like, um, don't quit until the miracle happens or something like that. It goes something like that. So how do I escape today? The answer is that I don't. Instead of escaping today, I walk through my challenges. And um, it looks like, I have people who tell me, oh, you're so brave, you're an inspiration, you're this, you're that. I'm just walking and I'm talking about it. That's all I'm doing. I don't feel brave. It's not like I'm facing these things without crying. I'm not facing these things without being scared. I'm not facing all of this without pain. I'm just taking a step anyway. One of the things that I learned in sobriety also was that um, the steps, our program helps us to, they say, intuitively know how to handle situations that used to baffle us. That is part of the promises. And by staying present and staying engaged and not finding a way to escape, I'm practicing walking in pain. I'm practicing walking with fear. I'm practicing walking even though I'm shaking. I'm practicing steadying my feet when I feel shaky. All of that stuff, it very much reminds me of vestibular therapy. They told me when I started vestibular therapy, they meaning the doctors and the therapists, that it gets worse before it gets better. And that's because when I start doing these things that trigger my symptoms for my head and my vision, um, it it feels worse because they're trying to figure out what is my threshold for what I can do and what I can't do. And then once we find out where that threshold is, then we keep pushing, slightly pushing the threshold, trying to move the threshold up a little bit. And that's what sobriety has been like for me also. When I first entered sobriety, I started doing those firsts. So the same thing as vestibular therapy. They had me walking a line and moving my head side to side. Um, how long can I do that? 10 seconds, 20 seconds? How long before I start feeling nauseous? Well, similarly, when I first got sober, it was, okay, let's try going to a happy hour with work. How long can I stay there before I start feeling agitated? How long, how close can I get to people who are drinking without feeling jealous or angry or wanting one? And what is my threshold? Can I go at all? Or do I need to skip happy hours? And then I slowly start pushing, again, pushing that threshold and be able to withstand more and more and find that as I keep pushing those thresholds, I am more capable of dealing with fill in the blank, whether it's sobriety, whether it's dealing with my vestibular symptoms, my headaches, everything, my language and memory problems, due to my stroke, all of this stuff. It's a matter of just pushing, and it doesn't feel good. There are so many times that I'll go to vestibular therapy and I'll just have to go sit down. I can't do anymore, period. I can't do anymore. And it doesn't feel good. I feel nauseous, my head hurts, I can't see straight, all of that stuff, but I just do it anyway. Why? Because I don't have an alternative. Either I don't push my threshold and my threshold lowers, and so I can do less, or I push my threshold and feel like crap every now and then, once a week, but am able to start doing a little more. And I just have faith and patience, like I talked about yesterday. I think that was yesterday. Faith and patience that it's gonna do something, that it's going to have some sort of positive effect on my journey, on my recovery journey. Then what do? I show up and I talk about it. I show up to this podcast, I show up to my sobriety meetings, and I talk about how I'm doing it. These meetings that I go to, not just the sobriety meetings, but also the support group meetings, my vestibular support group meeting, my stroke support group meeting, which I love, and I haven't been able to go for several months now. But we all go there so that we can share how we're doing, and how we're doing it, how we're doing life with whatever invisible illness that we have. And some of them aren't invisible. Some people, they don't have an invisible disability. Theirs is very visible. Regardless, we talk about our pain, but we also observe each other's progress. And this shared experience is incredibly powerful. This is the freely giving. It doesn't feel like a lot of times when you're going into a meeting and you're talking about your pain that you're freely giving anything. But I'll tell you, there was somebody this morning in my morning meeting, and she was talking about the incredible challenges that she's facing right now, due to her disease of alcoholism. And what she's giving me freely is a gift, because she's reminding me of what it was like when I was early in sobriety and before I got sober. And it reminds me, when I hear the suffering, that I'm not alone. Other people are walking the path. And then after she shares, I can speak up and say, me too. This happened to me, and it's very similar to what you're going through. And we all just kind of come together in what feels like inside of us as confinement. When we join that confinement together, it breaks it open, it cracks it open. We link it together and it becomes freedom. The promises of my program talk about, really, I had somebody talk about them this morning, just like went through each one. And I thought, as I listened to each one, and give it a try, listen, go through and read the promises of AA and tell me if you don't agree with this. As I read them, each one gave me the feeling of confinement. The feeling of confinement changes to freedom, each and every one of them. Um, it was like, we will not regret the past nor wish to shut the door on it. It's like, I used to have this feeling of confinement about and regret about the past. And now I have freedom from that. I don't want to shut the door on it. It is I learn from looking at the past. I have the freedom to look at the past and gain value from it. And I was able to hear every single one of those promises. What I heard was confinement to freedom. Um, I was really freaking skeptical the first time I read the promises. And then as I kept coming back to the meetings, I was like, that one in particular, there's no freaking way that I won't regret the past. That's what I always felt. And it wasn't until later, I mean, a couple years in, it might have been a few years in, that there was one specific situation that I was like, I'll never not regret that. And then the day came when I finally realized, you know what? I needed that to happen in my life. I needed that to happen so that I can look back on it and know that who I am and what I grew, how I've grown from that person, that version of me. As I continue to work the steps and engage in my recovery as a stroke survivor, I am still experiencing, for the second time, like this confinement to freedom feeling. My fears are transforming. My depression, although still very real, as I experienced in the waiting room yesterday at the doctor's office, I guess that was 2 days ago, at the doctor's office, I still am very troubled by thoughts of death. And that is a feeling of confinement. I feel like I am um, at times that the like those same walls are swelling up and pushing me inside of myself, and feeling very much like I can't escape from whatever's going to happen to me. I start feeling very panicked, and I'm working with my psychiatrist about it. I'm talking about it, but it's still there. But I know that in time, I have proof that in time, these feelings, these fears that confine me and confine me on the inside will lift in time, and they will be replaced with a growing sense of freedom. And from that, there will be serenity again. I haven't, I feel it, but I still have this underlying fear. And I think that that's fine. I'm not afraid of the fear. It's just exhausting. I'm tired. I'm tired of being fearful. But this journey from confinement to freedom, it will be rewarding as it continues to play out for me. I'm going to continue to give freely what was given to me in sobriety. And as I continue on through my stroke recovery and my vestibular therapy, every opportunity I can, I will try to give freely what was given to me. I've worked really hard to get to where I am in stroke recovery right now. I have. I've worked really freaking hard to keep facing the challenges that are inside of me, the scary stuff inside of me. And I've worked really hard to change my way of life that allows me to surface joy without a career, without being able to leave the house, or go very many places, and all the restrictions, the limitations, the confinement. I'm working really hard to keep picking at the lock that I feel like is kind of confining me. And I know I have every bit of faith and patience that things are okay. That's what I'm supposed to say. Things are okay. And they are. Things are okay. I'm doing it. But I know that things will play out and something beautiful will continue to unfold in my life. It already is unfolding. Depending on how I feel and what I'm going through each day, it's hard to see it. It's not a continuous path upward. It seems to be kind of rocky, but I'm going. And I think this concept and reminding myself of what that confinement felt like in sobriety is helping me to remember and share it freely with you today. And that's the only way that I'm going to keep, moving in that direction and get the freedom that that awaits me. So thank you so much for joining me today on the Recovery Daily podcast. I will talk